At the episode start, we see a massive wolf in front of numerous humans. We then see a princess welcoming the summoned heroes with multiple mages. Then, one of the mages respectfully appraises the student's powers with a magic mirror artifact. The handsome boy gets the talent to be a holy sword user, pleasantly astonishing the mage. Then the dark purple and orange hair girl gets appraised, and their talent is revealed to handle holy magic, wind magic, thunder, and ice magic. Seeing this, the mage once again gets delighted. The princess asks 3 heroes to help save the kingdom of Erasure. Meanwhile, behind the 3 heroes, an average-looking guy in an office suit stood and wondered if the situation was similar to those other-world summons he had read about. Then suddenly the mage looks at him and asks him if he's another hero. The mage then appraises him and says his name and age. Mukoda Tsuyoshi, 27 years old, and his skill online grocery. Hearing this, the other 3 students mockingly laugh at him as there isn't any convenience store in this world, and assume his skill to be useless. This makes MC embarrassed. So he asks the mage if he has any other skill. However, the mage tells him he only has this one skill. In the meantime, the students cheerfully speak with the princess, and one of the mages tells MC that since he was summoned, he must have an audience with the king. Later, the 4 heroes who had been summoned kneel before the king, who tells him that the Demon King has repeatedly attacked them in Erasure Kingdom. The king then asks the heroes for their help to keep the peace in his kingdom, and says that he is certain the Demon King knows how to get back to their world. The handsome boy says that he can't forgive the Demon King who made the people suffer, and both girls agree with him and decide to help their kingdom. However, seeing their appearance full of jewels and gems, MC thinks they are suspicious. So he gets up and respectfully tells them that he doesn't think he is a hero, and he may accidentally interfere with heroes' work. That's why he would like to live a simple life. Later on the streets, MC looks at the gold pouch and thinks he got 20 coins king. MC then sees the people around him begin noticing his clothes. So not to look suspicious, MC buys a new set of clothes. Then after eating food, MC rents a cheap room, then lays down on the bed, and becomes glad that he decided not to become a hero. MC then recalls how the royals were so luxurious and suspicious, so he decided that he shouldn't stay in this kingdom for a long time. MC then sits up and opens the status window, and gets amazed at it. He then checks the information and finds out that he is level 1, and has a skill called Appraisal Item Box, with which he doesn't have to worry about the amount of luggage. MC then examines his unique skill Online Grocery. He declares its name, but nothing out of the ordinary happens. However, when he touches the name of the status window, to his surprise, an online grocery store opens in front of him. There, MC decides to buy a water bottle since he often gets sick when he goes abroad. After that, he puts a snack in his cart and presses the buy button, and an option of asking him to pay pops up. So MC takes out real silver coins and succeeds in paying with them. Then suddenly a parcel appears beside MC containing the things he brought from his status window. Seeing this, MC becomes extremely happy and thinks as long as he has money, he doesn't have to worry about food. He then thinks of leaving the kingdom quickly. On his way, MC meets a soap merchant and asks if he is carrying his goods in his item box, but the merchant tells him the backpack is only luggage, and says that the item box is the skill that only 1 in 1,000 possesses. MC then asks about the appraisal skill, so the merchant tells him appraisal skill is the dream of every merchant, however it is a skill only heroes summoned from another world possess. The merchant then asks him why he is going to Keels, so MC tells him to cross the border as he wants to go to the neighboring country. The merchant whispered that he had made a wise decision by going there because of the kingdom of Erasure was on the verge of destruction, and the border would be closed soon. Later, after arriving in town, MC discovers that the stagecoach is suspended and finds out it's suspended because the kingdom doesn't want its people to run away. So, seeing the situation, MC decides to go to the Adventure Guild, as it would not be easy to fight the monster with his meager strength. He meets the receptionist and tells her he's here to put the escort mission to the kingdom of Venin. So the receptionist tells him that it would take him days to complete the mission, and it would cost him at least 7 gold coins. However, since the stagecoach has been suspended, these requests have increased significantly. So the receptionist advises him to put up at least 8 gold coins, and after a bit of thinking, MC agrees. Then the receptionist calls for the man called Werner and asks him if his team could escort MC to the border of the Kingdom of Venin. Werner then greets MC and introduces himself as a C-rank adventurer. MC then asks if they could accept his request. He also offers to provide them with food, while MC thinks he doesn't hate cooking and could use his skill to buy cheaper ingredients. Afterward, they agreed to meet tomorrow morning. Later in the morning, Werner introduces his team, the swordsman Vincent, the scout Rita, the mage Ramon, and the charming healer Franca. Afterward, they begin their journey toward the Kingdom of Venin. After traveling for a while, they take a break from their tiring journey, so MC decides to cook the food. He uses his item box skill and takes out the cooking utensils and the stove, surprising the team members. Meanwhile, Rita arrives toward MC, gets excited after seeing the stove, and thinks it's a magic stove. Nevertheless, MC doesn't reveal much and tells her he got the stove from an acquaintance. MC then recalls how, when he was shopping, he found a stove that worked with magic and was similar to modern stoves, though the cost was 50 gold coins. That's why he brought an affordable portable stove from an online grocery. MC then makes white sandwiches and soup and presents them to his escort party. The party members all have a delightful time eating the delicious food. According to Vincent, he has never eaten bread this soft before, so MC lies and tells them that the bread is from his hometown, and he had put it into his item box before he left from there. Werner hesitates to eat because the bread is precious. However, MC tells him not to worry, so the relieved Werner continued eating. Then Rita says that they did the right thing by accepting this mission. Vincent also clears his doubt and says he first thought of a one-man escort might be too much. However, he too is glad right now. Later, while traveling, their scout Rita discovers something off by the tree, and suddenly 2 flying-type monsters come out of the trees. Seeing this, Werner and Vincent instantly rush toward the monsters while unsheathing their swords and striking the monster, cutting them in half. Afterward, Franca uses her healing magic to heal Vincent's bruised hands. Meanwhile, their scout Rita returns from scouting the area. She tells Werner about the red boar near him. However, he is unfazed and tells her there's no need to take a detour for the likes of the boar. He then asks Ramon to drive the boar out in the open. With his magic, the massive boar instantly comes out of the forest, scaring MC. Werner asks MC to hide in the back. Then Werner and Vincent rush toward the boar, and with their skills and strategy, they finally kill the beast. Seeing their power, MC gets awestruck. After butchering the boar, Werner says that the skins and horns from the red boar can be sold at a high price. However, the meat is regrettable, as they can only take what they eat. MC then interjects and offers to put the meat into his item box. Later, after the exhausting journey, they decide to rest, and MC suggests that they have an early dinner today, and tells them he'll let them eat something different this time. Later, however, when MC is cooking, everyone gathers around him, making it difficult for him to take out modern ingredients he bought from the online grocery. So he lies that he can't focus and gets embarrassed if they keep looking at him. MC then began making dinner and finally finished making his pot-à-feu. Then everyone got 1 bowl each. However, they instantly finish their bowls and ask for seconds, which surprises MC. So Ramon explains that they normally eat jerky and hard bread. Franca continues the discussion and says that's why eating something this warm is really fulfilling for them. Then Rita tells MC something amazing thanks to his meal. Her body feels more sharp than usual, and Franca says her fatigue is gone, making MC think that this sounds like an effect from the supplements. So seeing their pleased expressions, MC decides to use appraisal on them. However, when he sees the effects of his food on them, he spews out his food. He then appraises the bowl in his hand and finds out that the food gives a limited time buff to the person who eats because it was made with otherworldly ingredients. Seeing this, MC thinks this is a bit dangerous and imagines himself working as a slave, so he decides no one could know about his secret. On their eventful journey, Werner tells MC that they will reach the Kingdom of Venin in 2 or 3 more days. Once the border is crossed, it would only take half a day to get to the city. Afterward, the party arrived at the forest as it was already night. They decided to camp there for today, and everyone takes care of their duties, including MC, who cooks the red boar meat. To keep the ingredients from online grocery store a secret, MC decides to be more proactive in using the material of this world. So MC slices the meat in steak style, puts it in the sauce, and leaves it for rinsing. In the meantime, he cuts cabbage in a beautiful way, as it is essential for today's dinner. Afterward, he fries the meat, making the team member swallow because of the delicious smell. Meanwhile, unknown to everyone, a strange creature is eyeing them from far away. Then MC finally prepared the dinner, and everyone began eating the food enthusiastically. Even Franca, who doesn't like red boar meat much, liked MC's fried meat dish. They also liked the soup he made, as it refreshed the palate, and they could also eat as much as they wanted. However, at that instant, everyone gets extremely shocked to the point their spoons fell from their hands, and their face was like they saw a ghost. Then with a shaking voice, Werner asks MC to look behind him. When MC looks back, he becomes utterly shocked, and from fear, he even forgets to breathe. This was the same wolf we saw in the beginning, Fenrir. Then Fenrir asks MC to let him eat his food. So, with fear, MC gives him his plate, full of fried meat. However, Fenrir only takes a moment to finish the food and says it's not enough. So, MC asks if he could wait a bit longer, as he needs to make more. Hearing this, Fenrir looks deeply at him and tells him to make it quickly. So, MC makes multiple fried meat dishes until the gluttonous wolf is finally satisfied. Then, Fenrir gets impressed by MC that he could satisfy him with this little meat. Fenrir tells him something shocking again, which is to form a familiar contract with him. MC first thinks of refusing him, however he gets scared by Fenrir's death stare and accepts the contract. Afterward, they form the contract, and once the ceremony is concluded, Fenrir lies down and tells MC that from now on, it's his duty to look after him. Hearing this, MC gets a bit confused, so Fenrir tells him he expects 3 regular meals a day. After the legendary monster gets a feel of just how delicious Mukoda's food is, it forms a pact with him to be his familiar. To do this, the two join heads together, sealing the contract. Shortly after that, finish forming the familiar contract, the Fenrir asks to be named by Mukoda. This surprises him, more since he didn't have any ideas for a suitable name for the beast. After a slight moment of contemplation, he comes up with awful names like Pochi and Hachi, of which Fenrir wasted no time in blurting out his dislike for them. While this is going on, Mukoda's fellow travelers are still hiding behind a rock as they observe the situation. On the other hand, he continues to think of a name and eventually comes up with Fel, extracting it from his existence as a Fenrir. Hearing this, the Fenrir is pleased and agrees to have Fel as his name from that moment. Continuing on their journey, the people are scared when they see Mukoda and his crew. This is because of the large Fenrir they now have traveling with them. Werner notices this and talks to Mukoda about his worries. He apparently is worried since they are now approaching the borders to the kingdom of Vinen. When Mukoda seeks to know what exactly is making him worry, he is told that they would definitely be stopped on their arrival at the border. This is due to the fact that they are traveling with a Fenrir, who is known in history for having the power to destroy a whole country. Werner believes that the kingdom of Vinen will not let Mukoda in, since he is the one who is tied by the familiar contract to the Fenrir. Hearing them say all of this, Mukoda is devastated. He's worried about the fact that he had just successfully left his previous kingdom to avoid such problems as these, but now happens to find himself in another problem on arrival into this world. Seeing him worried, the Fenrir Fel urges him not to worry and assures him that he will destroy anyone who tries to mess with him. At this moment, their deepest fear comes to light. While watching, Fel says this. To ease the tension, Fel reminds them that it is time to eat. Upon being reminded, Fel shops for some food from his interdimensional portal. Fortunately, he's able to find some meat that he had kept aside from earlier. However, it isn't enough to feed them all. Just then, Fel informs Mukoda about his intentions to eat meat. This prompts Mukoda to inform him about the shortage of meat, urging him to catch meat for himself if he wants to eat. Without wasting much time, the now hungry Fel returns into the woods in search of a good source of meat. Watching him leave, Werner wonders why Mukoda didn't just use the meat he had. However, Mukoda reveals his intention to make Fel provide his own food. Hearing him say this, the others are thrilled at the fact that he can now order a Fenrir. While they say this, he becomes uncomfortable and reveals that Fel had only done the familiar contract with him because he wanted food. Furthermore, he reveals that Fel is a glutton who loves to eat a lot. Shortly after, Fel arrives with a large bird, demanding that he prepare the meat quickly. Looking closely, Werner identifies the bird as a rock bird, a B-rank monster. Furthermore, he reveals that they had barely defeated it a while back, even after using all they had. Fortunately, one of them informs the others that the rock bird's claws and beak cost a lot. Meanwhile, due to how large the monster is, Mukoda seeks their help in skinning it. While they do this to gain the expensive claws and beak, Mukoda wishes that they do so he can get the meat he needs. When they're done, Mukoda is left with as much meat as he needs. He grills the meat on both sides, removes the excess oil, and mixes it with sauce. When he's done, he hands them a plate each. At this moment, Fel comes demanding for his share, but Mukoda tells him to be patient since he had to do everyone else's portion before doing his. Shortly after, Mukoda feeds Fel with as much meat as his stomach can take, and his stomach definitely took most of the rockbird meat. When they're done, they continue on their journey and arrive at the border of the kingdom of Vinan. Using a telescope, Mukoda sees a lot of soldiers outside. When he informs the rest, Werner believes that it is so because of Fel. He, however, offers to go to them in order to explain the situation they are in. Furthermore, he urges them to wait behind while he goes. Watching him go, Mukoda wonders if he is going to be okay. However, he is assured that Werner would be able to sweet-talk them. A few moments later, Mukoda and his crew find themselves surrounded by armed soldiers. The captain of the soldiers seeks to know if Mukoda has really formed a familiar contract with Fenrir, and he replies positively. As much as the captain is shocked, he maintains his calm and openly utters his disapproval of the Fenrir, which can destroy a country, from getting into their kingdom. To ease his fears, Mukoda talks to Fel, informing him that the people are only worried that something would happen if they let him in. Asking him openly if he would rampage, in reply, Fel doesn't seem to have an issue with them, but assures them that he won't do anything to them, as long as they do not mean any harm. Hearing him say this makes the captain believe further that the Fenrir has now become Mukoda's familiar. After a brief moment of contemplation, he agrees to let them in, but pleads with Mukoda to keep Fel in control. Immediately, he urges Fel to behave himself, since it will be his fault if something happens. To further keep Fel in check, Mukoda promises him that there will be no food for him if he causes any problems. Hearing this, Fel reluctantly agrees to do so. Werner, however, joins his voice with Mukoda in assuring the captain that Fel wouldn't cause any trouble, most especially since he didn't do anything bad on their way to the kingdom. Having been allowed to enter the kingdom, they are asked for their guild cards at the gates. Unfortunately, Mukoda knows nothing about this, as it sounds so new to him. Also, since he has no guild cards, he is asking to pay 5 silver coins for him and 2 silver coins for his familiar. Meanwhile, when they finally gain entrance into the kingdom, they are all excited. Mukoda, on the other hand, is thankful to them for traveling with him. However, Werner believes he would get busy from now on, since the stories of the Fenrir and his master would spread and get to the ears of the Marquess, of the area, and even the king. The mere thought of this bothers Mukoda, but he's relieved after remembering that he doesn't plan to stay in the kingdom for too long. Instead, he intends to travel around while making profits using online grocery to achieve his aim. Werner suggests that he joins either the Adventurers Guild or the Merchants Guild. Hearing this, Mukoda immediately believes that joining the Merchant Guild would be the best for him since he sees himself running a food stand and selling new products. His friends, however, wonder how he intends to skin the meat for Fel if he joins the Merchant Guild. Fortunately, he is told that the Adventurers Guild can skin and purchase the remains of animals from him. With the two guild being so beneficial to him, Mukoda is left troubled as to which one to join. Just then, he's informed that he can join both of them, if he's unsure. However, they convince him to decide after they reach the town. Just before entering the town, Mukoda is asked to pay some coins, and this causes him to lament, mostly because he's now running out of coin. On entering the town, they are met by the Marquess servant who informs them, Mukoda, that his master wants him to visit the residence. Upon receiving this information, Mukoda doesn't seem interested, but doesn't openly state it. When the servant insists, he states that a mere man like him shouldn't be meeting with honorable men, but the servant continues to convince him. When Fel sees how uncomfortable the situation is getting for Mukoda, he steps in and threatens the servant into leaving him alone and running off to his master. Seeing him run away, Mukoda feels it is too much, but Fel assures him that it is the only way people like that can understand. Seeing what just happened, Werner wonders if it's okay to deny the Marquess's invitation. But Fel shows that he is ready to take anything being thrown at them. Shortly after, Werner demands Mukoda's signature as they get to the point where they are forced to part ways. After signing, Mukoda says goodbye to his traveling buddies. With just Fel left with him, Mukoda heads to the Merchant Guild. On the way there, the people are terrified to see a Fenrir, and either exhibit shock or hide in fear. When Mukoda gets to the Merchant Guild, they are thrilled to see the Fenrir behind him. He is met by a beautiful lady who gives him a brief explanation of what the Merchant Guild is, further stating that it is divided into 5 levels. To begin, the lady advises him to begin at the Iron rank and offers him a guild card to complement his membership. Before leaving, Mukoda asks to know if the guild can purchase anything. In reply, he is assured that they do, and this prompts him to promise to bring his goods when next he comes. Later in the day, Mukoda leads Fel to a shed where he can sleep, since he isn't allowed to sleep in the inns. While Fel has no issues with sleeping there, he reminds Mukoda about the fact that they have not had lunch. When Mukoda remembers this, he decides that they will have an early dinner instead. For dinner, he prepares a large chunk of meat for Fel. While cutting, his cravings for rice is heightened and he decides to cook that for himself. While frying the meat, Fel hungrily lurks around. When he is done, he uses different sauces to spice up the meat in order to make it more tasty. As much as Fel loves all the sauces, he chooses to stick with the garlic-flavored sauce. Meanwhile, Mukoda's rice is ready, and he spices it up with some steak and sauce. Seeing how Mukoda eats his food, Fel demands for some. After eating and while tidying up, Mukoda is thankful to Online Grocery for being able to eat good food like this, even while in a different world. Later in the night, Mukoda retires to his room, and he's pleased to sleep on the bed after a long time traveling. The next day, Mukoda heads once again to the Merchant Guild. This time, he goes there with some goods to be sold. Handing it to the lady, when she sees it, she immediately runs in to meet her master. Shortly after, Mukoda is led to meet him. Just then, the head of the Merchant Guild offers to pay Mukoda 14 gold coins for them. This surprises Mukoda, who had bought them for just 5 copper coins. While he's still processing the shock, the man continues to increase his bid up until 17 gold coins. At this point, Mukoda is forced to stop him and the two reach an agreement. With the money Mukoda had made from the sales, he realizes that he doesn't have to worry about money for a while. Before heading home, Mukoda remembers to head the Adventurers Guild. Getting there, he receives a rather cold treatment compared to that which he received at the Merchants Guild. This he attributes to the fact that he had come without Fel. He's given a form to fill and little to no information about what the guild entails. Then he is asked to sort out for G-rank missions and work his way up to A rank, which is the highest rank for an adventurer. Later that day, while looking at the task for the G-rank adventurer, Fel comes to remind Mukoda of the fact that he is hungry, and the latter wastes no time in cooking for his familiar. The next day when Mukoda wakes up, he is hyped and refreshed for the day. Due to this, he realizes that it will be a good day to execute the task of looking for herbs, which the Adventurers Guild had given him earlier. This also happens to be his first mission with the Adventurers Guild, and he assumes it will be a waste of his registration fees if he procrastinates. While he prepares to embark on the quest, Fu stares angrily at him. However, Mukoda acts like he isn't there the whole time. When Fu notices this, he chooses not to be silent anymore and blurts out the fact that meals are more important than the mission he intends to embark on, bluntly stating that he wants to eat meat. Hearing him say this, Mukoda concedes and decides to cook him a meal. However, there are a few ingredients left to prepare a meal. In order to prepare the meal Fu so desperately craves for, Mukoda instructs him to go on a hunt, while he uses the time to gather the herbs he needs for the Adventurers Guild. With no other choice, Fu agrees to go. However, just before leaving, he is worried that Mukoda might be in danger once he leaves, most especially since he feels the presence of monsters in the area. As a preventative measure, he casts a barrier around Mukoda. Thus, it gives him the needed peace of mind to leave Mukoda on his own. Before he goes, he reminds Mukoda not to forget about making lunch. This causes Mukoda, who had earlier thought Fel was cool, to be reminded about how gluttony he can be. With Fu gone, Mukoda begins his herb-finding mission. Looking at the list of herbs he has to find, he realizes that he has to find 2 unique grasses. Naturally, this would be a hard thing to do, especially since he is expected to find this in a field filled with different grasses. Fortunately, this is easy for him when he uses appraisal, which allows him to identify each grass by its name. Going into the field, he realizes that most of the grass is weeds. However, he is fortunate enough to see the grass he needs. After that, he continues to see some grass at close range and ends up picking a lot of it. This makes him wonder if he can bring back more than the requested amount. Even though he thinks it's a bit early, he makes preparation for lunch. To prepare for lunch, he checks his online store, and due to the fact that they currently didn't have any meat, he decides to make it as cheap as possible. To make it like this, he substitutes meat for ground beef and pork, and intends to cook it with canned meat sauce and pasta. Step by step, he prepares the meal, and the aroma from it attracts Fu, who had apparently just returned from his hunt with a rock bird in his mouth. Fu, on the other hand, claims that he likes the teriyaki which Mukoda had made from the rock bird earlier, and decided to catch the rock bird. Surprisingly, he informs Mukoda about a few animals he had caught but left in the forest since he couldn't bring them at once. Hearing this, Mukoda assures him that they will go and get it later. Just then, he continues with his cooking, and when he gets done, he sums it up by sprinkling on some cheese powder. When he offers the food to Fu, he smells it and states that it smells kind of away. In reply, Mukoda informs him that it is called spaghetti in his world, assuring him it's good. Listening to Mukoda and trusting his cooking skills, Fu decides to have a taste. When he does so, he finds out how delicious it is. Most especially, he is thrilled with how good it tastes, with not too much meat, like he loves. While Fu eats, Mukoda laments about how he hasn't found a way back to his world yet. However, he feels relaxed since he has gotten to eat the same meal he eats in his world, in this world. This he considers to be a luxury. Meanwhile, after eating all his pasta, Fel blurts out how he feels comfortable with having this for lunch. Hearing him say this, Mukoda finds it funny, but he finds Fu's face, which has stained with the meat sauce, to be funnier. Later that day, Fu leads Mukoda to see the rest of the monsters he has killed. Seeing the heap of monsters Fu has killed, Mukoda is shocked to his bones. Using his appraisal, Mukoda is able to see the names of the monsters, and just their names freak him out. One after another, he saves the animal in his portal. While doing so, he asks Fu if he can eat all the meat he had killed, and just as we'd expect, he says yes. In response to this, Mukoda states how he is familiar with the other monsters, but had no idea that one of the monsters called an orc was even edible. To answer him, Fu states that humans eat orcs all the time. Hearing this, Mukoda tries to understand this with the ideology of a pig on 2 legs. When they are done with moving the monsters, Mukoda asks that they return to the town, so he can bring the herbs he had collected back to the guild. In order to get there faster, Fel asks Mukoda to get on his back. While Mukoda is excited at this, he ends up being as frightened as ever when Fu rides so fast and ignores his plea to stop. Shortly after they arrive at the town, and Mukoda seems very exhausted. Seeing him like this, Fu wonders why he's so weak. Just then, Mukoda complains about Fel's speed, asking what he would have done if he had fell out. In response, Fu states that he doesn't care, since it would be Mukoda's fault if that happened. Having regained his strength, Mukoda lets him know that he will not get to eat any more meals if that happens. Getting to the Adventurers Guild, Mukoda submits the herbs, and the lady is shocked that he has so many. This prompts him to ask if it's a bad thing. In response, she stated it is amazing for a newly registered G rank to achieve this. Mukoda, however, attributes his success to luck. Furthermore, he realizes that the lady happens to be talking more than she had spoken the first day he came to the guild. Just then, she gives him his payment for scripts. Seeing this, he immediately reveals that he has some orcs and other monsters to sell, asking if they can be sold there. Hearing him mention an orc piques her interest. When she turns around, he informs her that the monsters were caught by Fu. Seeing Fu, she is overly excited but maintains her cool afterwards. Just then she directs him to whom he can sell the monsters to. First of all, he drops the orc and states that he would be starting with 5 orcs. Hearing him talk about starting with 5 orcs gets him curious, as he figures out that the place he is will be too small to house the monsters Mukoda intends to bring. Just then he takes them to a warehouse in the back. While they enter the place, the butcher informs Mukoda about him being the rumored guy. When Mukoda seeks to know what rumor has been flying around, he's informed about the rumor of a guy who tamed the legendary monster Fenrir. Not wanting him to say anything further, Mukoda immediately brings out all the monsters in his portal. When the butcher sees it, he is shocked, as this turned out to be more than what he had imagined. He is further shocked to realize that most of the monsters are A or B ranked monsters. Mukoda, on the other hand, wonders if the monsters are edible, and he is relieved that after being told they all are. With that doubt out of the way, Mukoda asks that they all be skinned, with all their parts sold. As much as the butcher thinks they will be, Mukoda understands that it's little compared to how large Fu's appetite can be. Looking at the large amount of work he would have to do, the butcher urges him to return the next day, informing him that his fees will be collected from the sold items. However, Mukoda pleads to have one of the monsters butchered so he can use it for dinner. Looking at the large pile of monsters, the seeker seeks to know if the orc will be fine. Hearing this, Mukoda is disgusted, since he still doesn't think orc is edible. However, the butcher assures him that it is delicious, and Fu intervenes, causing the butcher to stick with cutting up an orc. With the orc meat they had just gotten being their only option, Mukoda contemplates for a while about what to do with it. After a brief while, he decides to grill it, slicing the meat into flat portions. He makes it into 2 different flavors. Perceiving the smell, Fu thinks it's delicious, but Mukoda insists on putting the leftover meat sauce on the meat. When Fu tastes it, he is thrilled once again about how good Mukoda's cooking is. Just then, Mukoda decides to try the orc meat for the first time. However, he cannot stop seeing the image of an orc. At that moment, he takes a bite with his eyes closed and finds that it is so tasty. This convinces him not to dislike a food before you try it. The next morning, Mukoda heads down to the butcher's warehouse to pick up the meat. Surprisingly, he sees very large portions of meat and comes to the conclusion that they will last for a while. Just then, the butcher hands him the money he got from the sales of the other parts of the monsters, and this shockingly is a large sum. Apparently, the total sum after the butcher took this dismantling fee is 202 gold coins. Watching him get shocked at the price, the butcher realizes that he has no idea of the market price of the animal parts he brought. He lets Mukoda know that no matter how strong his familiar is, as long as he is clueless, then it's meaningless. After that, the butcher breaks down the valuable parts of the monster to Mukoda, making him understand their value. Shortly after, he hands Mukoda some demon stones which contain magical powers. Apparently, these stones are always possessed by an A rank or higher monsters. Before leaving, the butcher asks Mukoda if his familiar is truly Fenrir or just a great wolf. When Mukoda gets confused by the question, the butcher informs him about the argument in the town about whether his familiar is Fenrir or a great wolf, with some of them doubting if Mukoda had really tamed Fenrir like he claimed. However, the butcher states from his experience as an adventurer that Fu is truly Fenrir. Leaving the butcher's warehouse, Mukoda is bothered about the attention they are drawing in the town. This makes him decide to leave the border town. This he hopes would be easier since he now has a guild card and enough money to last them for a while. At that point, he informs Fu about his decision, and as much as Fu seems more interested in his sudden hunger, the two head out of the town. Finding their way out of the border town, Mukoda and Fu decide to camp in an abandoned site. While Mukoda complains about how exhausted they might be from walking so far, Fu reiterates the fact that they would have gone further if Mukoda had ridden him. Meanwhile, they decide to have dinner. Since Fu had made him so much money, Mukoda decides to treat him to some meat from his world. To do this, he orders a variety of meat from a famous restaurant, mixing them all to give Fu a befitting meal. While Fu eats the meal, Mukoda occupies himself with preparing from the main course for the night. He prepares some Japanese black wagyu, which he puts on Fu's plate. When Fu sees it, he considers it to be too small. However, upon being convinced by Mukoda to taste it, he does so and is thrilled by how soft the meat is. Seeing how hyped he is about the meat, he informs Fu that it is from a cow bred for the purpose of eating. Hearing this, Fu wonders why people did that when they could just hunt for meat, just like it is done in this world. Later that night, Fu feels overly energetic and decides to go for a hunt, leaving Mukoda behind. He heads into the forest and faces off against a whole lot of different monsters, casually defeating them. The next morning when Mukoda wakes up, he sees that the whole place is filled with dead monsters. This causes him to be frustrated. With this, he comes to the conclusion that he wouldn't give the Japanese black wagyu to